As you saw in Sue and Melissa's stories, we live in a city where we may be battling this epidemic, but we are doing so with supportive and compassionate groups and individuals. We'd like you to meet two of those individuals right now. Both have been touched in different ways by addiction and now have made the conscious decision to turn their pain and experiences into action to help others who are struggling on that difficult journey back to clean and fulfilling lives. Nyla Christian sweeps into a room and heads turn. She's beautiful, brilliant, vivacious, and compassionate. A strong aura of self-respect surrounds her, but she will be the first to tell you she didn't always give off such positive signals.
You know, I was trapped in negative life cycles for a very, very long time. I was a woman who was under the lash of alcoholism and addiction for a very good portion of my life.
As Nyla and I sat in a quiet, darkened studio, she spoke frankly about how her desire to be a great mother to her son Nico prompted her to begin the difficult journey to a clean and sober life, and how perfect strangers on the other side of that journey helped keep her from turning back.
When I made the decision, which took me quite a bit to make, a lot of life loss, love loss, family loss, a lot of loss, and a lot of attempts. But the final attempt, what was really important to me is that there was a network of people who welcomed me, and they were familiar with the path, and they were compassionate.
She calls those who welcomed her back into a life of long-term recovery a life bridge. They didn't judge her past. Instead, they encouraged her to continue moving toward her bright future.
You know, not everybody makes the decision to want to get sober, stay sober, be in a self-defined mode of recovery. Not everybody makes the decision, but once that self-decision is made, you know, if I can't be welcomed back, if the stigma is so thick and so deep and so isolating, then more than likely, and studies show that people do recidivate, people do return to the only way of life they've known and the only mode of survival.
She immediately knew becoming a life bridge to others was her calling. Through her Living Well and life-inspired projects, she is now the one helping people find their way out of the darkness. Part of being a life bridge is educating family and the community that the stigmas associated with addiction need to be thrown out.
It's Park Bench to Park Avenue. There's no socioeconomic factor here for alcoholism or addiction. So the idea of the destigmatization is, again, reiterating, no socioeconomic, there's no race, there's no status, there are no letters behind your name that will save you. I think Sam Quinones, who is the author of Dreamland, talks about the cure for addiction is community. That's the cure. The cure is family and community and connection. So yeah, having that life bridge is so super important.
On a brighter note, she also strives to shatter the myth that sober has to be somber.
Life Inspired is something that I do specifically to remind people that recovery is not droll or glum or dark or boring or restrictive. We have fun. We have fun all the time. Sans the special effects is what we say. Sans the special effects. We have a lot of fun.
On another bright note, here is her son Nico, a beautifully successful young man now attending college, and Nyla says they couldn't be closer. Her counseling and advocacy are not limited to teens and women, but it's where she concentrates her efforts because she's been there and believes that's where she can make a difference.
If I can reach one woman, just one woman, and who's the lifeblood of her family, stem the cycle, and the cycle is not only the physical addiction, but it's the psychological and spiritual imprisonment, then I've done my job.
I am a person in long-term recovery. First and foremost, I am a father. I'm a father of 4 sons, 3 of which are living. I've been in long-term recovery since 1994, And I raised my kids very well aware of the disease of addiction and alcoholism, which runs deep in my family.
Meet Joe Engel. He says even though he warned his kids of the dangers of addiction, his two oldest sons began experimenting with drugs and alcohol in their teens. His oldest son, Reese, struggled with heroin and opioid addiction for several years. He had bouts of being clean through the 12-step program.
His longest time away from heroin was 7 months. He had came home back to live with me, and things were looking up. And he was back in the house about 3.5, 4 days. And it was I remember the day that he was, I left him alone. I had to go to work, and he was going to be home alone by himself for the first time, and I remember texting all day long. And that was July 21st, 2011. And when he didn't answer my text, I came home from work that day, and I had found him. He was overdosed upstairs in his bed.
Joe grieved this tremendous loss, but eventually decided to turn his grief into action by forming the Las Vegas chapter of There Is No Hero in Heroin. It's a grassroots, volunteer-driven organization to help others affected by heroin and opioid addiction. He and two other grieving parents got it started.
We started, we sat in the kitchen of my house across the table with 3 other parents that had been affected by their kids' heroin use or opioid use, and we knew that we wanted to help. We weren't sure what the help was going to look like, and what we did is, we had a community yard sale. We made a little bit. We made $800. In the first community yard sale, we took $500 of that and we gave it to a sober living house.
This is one of the sober living houses for women. Joe explains this is where those who have reached a certain milestone in their recovery come to live for 30 days. The first 30 days are crucial to long-term recovery. Those days enable them to build a new foundation toward a clean and sober life before getting back into the real world.
That was our goal, to do one scholarship, voucher, rent voucher a month. To date, we've given away over $23,000 worth of those scholarships, all from community yard sales, from shooting tournaments, golf tournaments, personal donations. There's some things that they say in a recovery community. You got to change your playgrounds, playmates, and playthings, and to develop a foundation on which you can build a new way of living.
You will see on their website, tinhihlasvegas.info, the organization also holds special events and monthly meetings for those touched by addiction. And more recently, the group advocated to get Clark County School District, Nevada, and the city of Las Vegas to join together to create Mission High School for teens recovering from addictions. Joe's mission is not only to help those who have been touched by addiction, but to change the way society looks at addiction overall.
Certainly anybody who suffers from addiction is not a bad person trying to get good. It's a sick person who is trying to get well.
Both Nyla and Joe say they hope there is a day when these programs are not so badly needed. And that's where the important aspect of fighting this issue comes into play: prevention. They both spend time talking to teenagers about standing up for themselves and standing against drugs and alcohol. And they both say it's not always a sure fix, but keep those lines of communication open in the home. Knowing who your kids' friends are and what they're doing can help keep them on the straight and narrow.
Absolutely. Also on social media.
Yes, very good point.
Very important to stay involved.